Good morning, beautiful people. You are now watching the lifestyle segment on the weekend show. My name is Aisha B, and I'm joined this morning.
By Lucy Ojite. Aisha, you look really
You look
nice.
amazing. You're always complimenting me, Lucy. Thank you so much. All right, we're going to be talking about serious business this morning. According to UNICEF, about 10.5 million children are not in school, even though primary education is officially free or compulsory in Nigeria. It's characterized as having the world's greatest after-school population, which is estimated to about 10.5 million. This morning, we're going to be discussing this with a very interesting and returning guest on the weekend show.
Okay,
morning.
joining us in this conversation is Mr. Igo Akeraga. He's the member of the Nigerian Guild of Editors. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Good morning, it's a pleasure to be here.
Okay,
You're welcome,
sir.
Thank you.
Now, the last time when you were on the show, we were talking about education, the out-of-school children that we have in Nigeria, and looking at different solutions to these problems. And then we see in the last week that the federal government, in the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's renewed hope agenda, has given scholarships to PhD,
To all PhD,
to
masters,
and all of that, just to boost research. And we've also seen recent developments in having collaborations with international university lecturers coming as visiting lecturers to boost our educational sector. Do you think that this is a move in the right path to solving the educational problems that we have here in Nigeria?
Well, absolutely. For me, when the report came out after the NEC meeting and presidential spokespersons announced the package to the Federal Ministry of Education, I mean, I'm sure most Nigerians were elated, very, very happy that this is coming. Again, maybe not at the right time, because we should have done this way, way back.
years ago.
I guess
Exactly.
that is why we are a bit behind, in terms of, development in the educational sector generally. So President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has come out with this, and he tagged it as part of his entire package under the Renewed Hope agenda. Most Nigerians have received this well. I am a critic of government. Every government that has ruled Nigeria, from the military to the civilians. For me, if you have traveled out of this country, you will find that governments do not really do well, particularly in Africa. For that of Nigeria, it is usually very pathetic. You see governments progressively embarking on policies that do not add value to the lives of the people, whether in health sector, the educational sector, whether it's in infrastructure and all of that. But this policy direction by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, I think is a good one, very, very good one.
Of course.
At the time that there's multidimensional poverty in the country, where parents, even students, cannot actually afford their fees. So from 600 for PhD students, up to 750,000,
naira.
and for undergraduates and all that, up to from 500 to 600, and DNC and all the other locators of from 300 and I think 300 to 450. So it's a welcome development. You could see excitement. I watched a video where students of I think Woodman and Fodio University in Sokoto, they were celebrating, jubilating that this is a good news coming. So I think generally it's good news.
Yeah, but this is where my own question will come from this angle, because as you said, it's something that a lot of governments have actually promised us reforms and policies, but even the Minister of Education, Minister Olatunji, mentioned that it's going to reach about 15,000 students. Do you actually believe that, or how do we measure what they're saying? How do we evaluate how far this is going to go for students in Nigeria?
Well, that number is grossly inadequate, grossly insignificant. Even if you look at the total number of public universities in Nigeria, well over 250, as it were. And then you are just picking 15,000.
15,000 out of over.
Like a slap in the wrist.
Honestly, and this bill is about 66 billion naira, they said, will spread across for the Ministry of Education. Is it not too much for the number that they have given that they would at least give these benefits to?
Well, I guess if you have to work the figures, if you have to go into the details of the figures, they say the devil is in the details. If you begin to look at it, apparently you are going to see maybe there will be a few discrepancies here and there. The full details are yet to come out. Don't forget that we also have the NER Fund, the Nigerian Educational Loan Fund, which the current president also put in place. But for the 6 billion that is going to service, that is going to be deployed, that is for the year 2025 to 2026, the budget cycle, to support, the scholarship program. If you look at it for 15,000 students, I'm a bit worried. But don't forget, I guess some of them are abroad.
Actually,
so
yes.
if you work out the figures to dollar value, you're going to see that it's coming down.
We've heard it so many times that students that are abroad, at some point, they start struggling, whether with payments or fees. So now that the government is revisiting this, I don't know if you can tell us what your thoughts are for those that are in diaspora. Do you feel that they are still doing the right thing? Shouldn't it be a different approach rather than the same old approach of giving the money, the loans? What
I saw in this package was that I think government is attempting to take cognizance of those gaps in the past. Not just paying tuition. In the past, they just pay tuition and leave out the welfare for the students. So now they want to look at their welfare, pay for their hostels and all of that. So if they do that and they follow it through holistically, I think that could be some progress being made. I'm just worried about the number. If Nigeria is about a minimum of 250 million in population size, and you just pick 15,000, maybe that is the pilot program. Let me
just for a start,
maybe just to start to see how it works.
Even picking on numbers, we even saw in last few days where they said we're going to spend over 712 billion for the renovation of the Murtala Mohammed Airport in Lagos. And we are just seeing 6 billion naira being invested to education that ought to be the foundation of society. Do you think that that would be a misplaced priority, having to invest so much amount of money in rehabilitation of an airport, while our educational sector we still have a lot of out-of-school children, we still have gaps in infrastructure, in research facilities ongoing, and then the government goes on ahead to spend such amount for rehabilitation? Is that a good move for this administration?
Well, I will try to be objective here. All over the world, airports are a symbol of the country's image. If anybody arriving in the country for the I remember when I traveled to China about 5 years ago, when I got to Beijing International Airport, I was appalled. I was surprised at the level of infrastructure in that airport. You could get lost in Beijing International Airport if you are not educated. Even if you're educated, how many, you just see wings everywhere. You have to be reading, you keep trying to look at the direction, you see electronic devices everywhere trying to guide you. That is where the world is headed. We can't run our airports like we are a mushroom country. Nigeria is a big, is the biggest economy in Africa. We're moving towards
major investors coming in.
Yeah, major investors are. And then when they get, don't forget the Murtala Mohammed International Airport in Lagos. Some people even described it in the past as a pigsty. It's dirty, there's so much heat when you get in there, and you could see people just running all over the airport. The runway is poor and all of that. Well, we could be looking at the figures and what the size of upgrade of the airport. If the upgrade matches with the 7.5 billion, whatever,
712
billion, then it's unfair and good. If you go to the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, the Chinese have done a good job there. In the past, I don't know if you had visited Abuja in the past and that airport, you'll be ashamed they have that kind of airport in the nation's capital, Abuja. But now you go in there, you could see. So if they do that, that's fine. But for me, again, coming back to the education sector, with the number of out-of-school children, because the government now, whether at the sub-national level, they are divesting from school feeding program. They don't want to feed the students again. So that is a disincentive. Then teachers' welfare is also very, very crucial.
Speaking of the big elephant in the room, when you speak about ASUU and how they've been treated, sometimes they're on strike. We're not even sure anymore what ASUU is all about for now, because one minute they're fighting for their rights, one minute they're also saying there's strike, there's no strike. How do you feel ASUU comes playing into these new educational reforms?
Well, in the past, Emmanuel Shodeke, who is the former ASUU president, will now have Chris Piwano, who just took over from him. ASUU has been having a running battle. with successive governments, over the years. Either they're talking about welfare, or upgrade of university facilities, allowances, and all of that. The first ASU strike in Nigeria, if I recall, occurred in 1998 under former military head of state Ibrahim Babangida.
1998.
Yes, and on August 7 of that year, Babangida rolled out, a very draconian policy where he proscribed ASU, and seized their assets, and they were arresting many ASU members at the time. I recall I was, a middle-level journalist at the time. So between then and now, you could see progressively that not much have changed.
Yes.
Under Buhari alone, Buhari's 8 years rule, ASU went on strike 1,086 times.
I think it has been like the
massive,
longest strike.
Massive period that ASU had to go on strike. So Buhari, well, it's late now. People will say don't speak ill of the dead, but you see, it's not about speaking ill of the dead. That would be like begging the issue. He said, but your legacy, the legacies you leave behind when you are gone. So if the history of educational development in Nigeria is to be written, I'm not too sure that Buhari will be getting any applause. He will be recorded very poorly, very negatively, because under his watch, ASU had to down to 1,086 times. That is huge, and that is massive. And the Minister of Labor and Productivity under Buhari, who is taking most of the blame, is Chris Ngige. Exactly, former Anambra State governor, So, you see, because sometimes we forget history, but it's there, it's recorded. So, for me, not much have changed, but I guess Tinubu is trying to make some efforts. If you look at the last policy issues that is coming, particularly under the current Minister of Education, he's doing very well. They want to electrify the universities. That's part of the entire package. Want to provide electricity for the universities. They want to upgrade infrastructures in the university. Tinubu wants to ensure through his the Ministry of Education that the days of ASU strikes will be over. I just hope that the agreements, the successive agreements that will be reached with ASU, it's not about going back to renegotiate them. It's now to take steps to begin to implement them. Yes. Because just 10% or so of the agreements focuses on welfare. The rest is on, upgrading the university environment. But this part of the paucity of even the bad situation, Nigerian universities managed to produce some of the best graduates, whether it's a medical field, our doctors are very good.
And we are doing so well even in the international space.
Yes, so I'm sure if we put more funds there, Nigeria will just get it right at some point.
Yeah, and I think most of the challenges with our educational sector, mostly when we come to the tertiary level, even to the secondary tertiary level, we're doing fairly well in producing really sound graduates that even internationally recognized as best doctors, engineers, pharmacists, nurses. But when it comes down to the very local level, I think in the past week, I visited some of the schools, these public schools that were on strike. And the students resumed after the holiday, when we went on holiday for the National Day after the former president's burial, that Tuesday. I think they resumed on Wednesday. And when I went to these schools, I think the one in Karo and in Nyanya, and I saw the level at which the school infrastructure and the rate of out-of-school children in the administration of Goodluck Jonathan. I think he did a lot when he was putting regarding the Almajiri schools,
but where is that now?
Education, and I feel like this policy right now have been either outdated or ignored generally. So how do we now, the government now, or we as individuals now come to play, especially when you roam the streets, even in Abuja, and then you see a lot of these kids in the street, not to even mention the rates that you will find in really far north. So what is the government, and how are we even going to play a role to make sure that the foundation, the everyday child that running the streets with bowls, begging, can actually get education?
Would this 6 billion affect those children she's talking about? I think that's what we really want to know, because...
Well, I do not think it affects those children. The 6 billion does not target them. Basically, what I see as a major challenge in the Nigerian education sector that has recorded more than 12 million out-of-school children, I think the numbers are even growing.
Yes,
they are rising.
really, yeah.
Because we are not making concerted effort, whether at the federal level or subnational level, to bring in these pupils that are on the street. But what I see as a challenge basically is the cultural contradiction in certain regions of Nigeria where, you know, they admit that part of their culture is to embrace religious form of education. In the case of Almajiri, they hand them over to malams and all of that, who takes them through Quranic recitation. Now, if you do all of that before the child grows up to a certain level, so at what point does the child embrace Western education? Part of the crisis is not when you hear Boko Haram, they tell you that Western education is haram, it's not acceptable, it's a sin. So I see those as a contradiction. Nigeria as a country also have two sets of laws. It is one country I know. We have the penal code in northern Nigeria, and then you have the criminal code in southern Nigeria. So I see all of these, whether it is traditional and cultural contradiction. I also see the legal contradiction in how we try to manage, you know, our national affairs. So for the president of the country, that's why some people are also talking about, you know, trying to rework the constitution to reflect, you know, our realities, our diversity. Yeah. Because once we are not able to confront those realities, these problems will
continue and
so these children now they are in Abuja. You see them everywhere at every road intersection. You see them, and each time I remember the last time the minister of the FCT, Nyesom Wike, you know, came out with a policy to take them out of the street. You saw resistance coming from the north. Exactly. They are saying, oh, that is part of their culture. They should be allowed, you know, to stay where they are. So now, you know, when you have people who are advocating for the sustenance of what I think is a backward system, I see that as a challenge. So generally, if you look at even the figures of the out-of-school children, the 12 million or so, majority of them are from northern Nigeria. Exactly. It should concern every Nigeria that part of the country, they are not in school, that they are in the street. In southern Nigeria, even a poor family who is not able to feed himself find it very necessary, very mandatory to send their children to school. Yes. And so that is where also the disparity is growing between the north and south. So trying to bridge this gap for me is a huge challenge. Having to persuade those who believe that traditionally and culturally they have to embrace certain practices. Discouraging them, I think that's a Herculean task.
And truly, you made a very important point there, whereby you mentioned that that is what is taking us back. And with that still being present, we have a big issue to solve in Nigeria. Even the government, I feel, have been looking for ways to fight off these cultural, traditional issues that is affecting these new reforms. But speaking of now bridging this gap, we have what we call the FG Diaspora Bridge, the Federal Government Diaspora Bridge. And it's mostly about research, innovation. What do you really feel about that particular new reform? That's another innovation that has been brought to education. How do you feel that will help even you being into the educational sector, and even me being a lecturer, and also you knowing, loving going back to school children? How do you feel that affects those in the educational system, this Diaspora Bridge?
It's positive because beyond research, innovation, and all of that, Nigeria is not an island. We are living in a global village. So the government is also looking at exchanges, trying to compare our educational curricula with what is obtainable abroad, and embracing technology, where a student in Nigeria can receive lectures from from a lecturer, a professor, exactly, whether in England, in Scotland, in Canada, elsewhere. That is part of the general policy drive to bridge the gap, and that can enhance research output. It can encourage very positive innovation across across board. Don't forget that most of the scientific breakthroughs are a product of excellent research output. Yeah. Now, if Nigeria as a country, we do not look at what's happening outside our shores, and we just think that what we are doing locally will be sufficient, then we'll be living in a fool's paradise. So I see this, the bridging policy of the government is a positive effort to try and integrate our local educational policies with international policies.
And even young educators like myself, I would love to be part of such, research policies, the grants that they'll be given. But how do we access such? Because now I see them giving these reforms. We've not heard the channel or the process of how they intend
to apply.
Yes.
I think the starting point, the way the government is looking at it, first and foremost, you have to be in school. If you are in any of the schools, and then any of the universities, I think they have a pilot scheme where some of the universities are already being integrated to international universities, where lecturers abroad can directly, teach students in Nigeria, and lecturers here can also exchange their intellectual knowledge with students abroad. And of course, they're also looking at the possibility of exchange programs. It used to happen in the past when
That's what I wanted to say. This
travel,
isn't something that is new.
Over time, over time, a lot of particularly when Nigeria, the government of Nigeria came under the hands of jackboot military dictators, who became pariahs in the international community. Nobody wanted to do business with them. They were just sitting ducks within the country. They were not traveling out. So gradually, all of those positive policies began to dissipate, and it got us to where we are. So it's a good thing that we are trying to revive them. We revive them, and there will be positive output coming from them. I'm very, very positive about that.
So am I. I really hope so.
So before we even let you go, like looking at the challenges facing the educational sector and all of that, and with all the government have put in place with these reform policies and all of that, like is there something that they are missing out or we are missing out that if we actually put that policy or that reform into place is really going to change our educational sector?
Well, the reforms now for me should be focusing on welfare, because even lecturers in university are not, they are traveling abroad. There is brain drain, whether at the primary school level, secondary school level, and universities. We don't have many people wanting to study education, whether at the university level and all of that. And the salaries are so poor, the remuneration are so disincentivizing that nobody wants to go into teaching. The old saying that the reward of teachers are in heaven, I think it's no longer applicable here. Realistically, where you have politicians earning so much, whether at the local government level, state level, and federal level, earning so much, for me, for really doing nothing, and then you have teachers having to do research,
do the work,
go to school, you operate the 6334 system before you go through that and come out of university, do your youth service, and then you now go to teach and they pay you peanuts. At the subnational level, most states will not pay teachers up to 100,000.
Of course.
Yes, I'm aware of that. I did a random research, and it was appalling to find that primary school teachers earn less than, in some states they pay 65,000. Very embarrassing. Even with the national minimum wage at 70,000, states still pay 65,000 to teachers. So who will be willing to go and teach? Then again, very importantly, the disparity in certificates. Anybody who have an NC or you have an HND, they tell you, oh, if you have a BSc or whatever, you are superior. And then even in terms of promotion, whether at the state government or federal level, there is a bar. You get there, they say you can't progress more than that. So it's discouraging many people, from going into teaching, acquiring NCE or even doing HND and all of that. It discourages them. So government must now design specific policies to target these gaps. Once that exists, then the problem is going to subsist.
Yes, and I think when they actually even elevated Polytechnic HND to actually go for NYSC, it actually made a lot of persons change from always going to the university to continue in Polytechnics to
But even with your HND, after you go for NYSC,
you still have
to.
It's still there. And one thing is important is that with education now, we have a lot to work on. We're happy that the government has brought these new reforms, these innovations to help us to reach up to other economies such as Russia, USA, China, and the rest. But sorry, it's been so good to have you this morning. We appreciate you being here with us.
It's always a pleasure, but we should also move away from the blackboard,
and then go into the innovation of
buy computers for students at the primary school level, not talk of even university. It's taken for granted that a lot of this money should be used to buy laptops, and the students
You're
can
right.
have
That's a
access
fine
to
place to leave it, sir.
That's
Thank
a
you
fine
so
place to
much.
leave it. Thank you so much.
That's all we have for you on Lifestyle on the Weekend Show. Great conversation, Lucy. Thank you for joining me.
Aisha, it's always a pleasure. We have had a robust conversation on education, and coming up, we have a lot more on the Weekend Show, so don't go
Stay
anywhere.
tuned.